Hey, what if the future of your church isn't built on bigger crowds, but on tighter connections? What if the fivefold gifts of the apostle, the prophet, the pastor, teacher, and evangelist were never meant to just lead from the front, but actually to form disciples in spiritual community? Well, today on the Five Gifts podcast, we're fusing biblical leadership and strategic discipleship, showing you how to build spiritual communities that multiply and make an impact. Let's talk fivefold leadership, small group momentum, and the kind of transformation that Sunday services alone can't produce. And it's all right here, right now, and only on the Five Gifts podcast.
You're listening to the Five Gifts Podcast, a weekly show designed to equip leaders in the Spirit-filled church. I'm Bruce Ritter, and along with my co-host Charles Russell, we offer insights for leading the local church in the fullest expression of Jesus. If you're interested in learning more about practical theology, the gifts of the Spirit, and spiritual disciplines, this is the show for you. Welcome to the Five Gifts Podcast.
Are you a Spirit-filled minister ready to take the next step in your ministry training? The Servant Leaders Cohort will help you earn your BA, MA, or DMin. We offer in-person instruction in a small group learning environment that is affordably priced. Instruction happens in monthly 2-day intensives in the Triad of North Carolina. Degrees are approved and conferred by Vision Christian Bible College and Seminary. You can earn your bachelor's in 2 years, a master's in 15 months, or a DMin in 18 to 24 months. For more information, go to fivegifts.org/SLC.
Hey, welcome back to the Five Gifts podcast. We're here to help Spirit-filled leaders like you unlock the full potential of apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, pastoral, and teaching ministry. I'm your host, Bruce Ritter, and we're so glad that you've joined with us today. We're actually recording a few days earlier than normal. We're glad that you're catching us maybe on your way to work on a Tuesday morning or maybe the afternoon on a Thursday. Whatever works for you. That's the beauty of a podcast. You can catch past episodes and feel like they're talking to you today. And so we hope you'll find relevance in our topic of discussion this morning. But before we get into that, I want to welcome Charles to the podcast. Charles, good to see you as always.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to see you, Bruce. Thank you to everyone that's tuning in, whether you're listening or whether you're watching. We're thrilled to have you here with us on the Five Gifts podcast. And man, I tell you, another great episode lined up. As today we're talking about building these spiritual communities that multiply, help multiply the church. I don't know about anyone else, but I would rather multiply than add or subtract or divide. And so we're going to talk about multiplication through spirit-filled spiritual communities. And so that kind of brings us to our launching point. Whether you're leading a church or launching a ministry, overseeing a small group, there's one truth is clear. Discipleship does not happen by accident. It happens in intentional, spirit-filled communities. So this episode, we're going to explore 7 strategies for small groups to grow your groups that will also help to boost care and discipleship. And we're going to look at the roles of the fivefold gifts, how they serve in catalyzing a small group approach to spiritual formation. So here's the big question. Are your small groups just meeting, or are they impacting and multiplying mature believers? Bruce, why do small groups really matter?
Well, they do matter. And Charles, I just want to say before we really dive into this, the unique thing about our podcast, and I think the unique way that we teach fivefold ministry. And when I say unique, I'm not saying no one else is teaching it. I'm just saying that I think by and large we have a unique approach. We have maybe a different approach than what you're normally listening to, because we see the fivefold gifts as the functions of Jesus. We don't see them in over-the-top personalities. We don't see them in matters of one's identity. We see those as how Jesus functions intrinsically in leadership, in servant leadership in the local church, but also through all the ministries of the local church. And So when we talk about fivefold gifts, we definitely see their role in small group ministry. And because small groups do matter, we want to make sure that fivefold ministry is in place to release the full potential of real biblical discipleship through small group ministry. And here's the truth: in our culture of advanced technology, people are lonelier, they're more distracted, more isolated, and more spiritually passive than ever. And yet, small groups offer something rare. They offer relational depth, they provide spiritual accountability and transformation, and that outlasts a sermon. There's one thing that you have every day of the week that uh, that you don't have outside of a Sunday. You can have your sermon on Sunday, but every day of the week you're encountering people in relationship. And so we think small groups are absolutely important. In fact, there was a recent article I read from Lifeway Research that really caught my attention. I thought we should reflect some of it in today's podcast through our fivefold leadership grid. So we'll post a link to that article in the comment or the description section below the podcast or the YouTube episode, however you're following us today. But basically, Lifeway Research shows that 44% of Sunday worshipers are in groups. But those who are, they're more likely to grow spiritually. They're more likely to serve faithfully, and they're more inclined to stay connected. So, what's holding us back from maximizing the space of small group ministry? Those are incredible numbers. 44%. That's huge. Who here wouldn't want 44% of your church growing dynamically in their spiritual lives, serving at a faithful clip, reliably, and learning to grow in their spiritual gifts? Who wouldn't want that as a spiritual leader in the local church? And who wouldn't want a church of people that were connected? So it's something we can't avoid. It's something we need to make sure that we're giving the proper attention to through leadership. Now, what if the real breakthrough, though, isn't just in starting more groups, but aligning them with the fivefold gifts? We're going to walk through 7 strategies that, when they're infused with the biblical leadership that we talk about, they can radically reshape your discipleship culture in the local church. Charles, talk to us about these 7 strategies.
Absolutely. These are 7 field-tested uh, strategies. They are designed and intended to grow in small groups and to supercharge discipleship. And then each one we're going to try to pair with 1 or 2 fivefold functions. And so the first one would be that the spiritual leader must champion small groups. So in this strategy, we can see the pastoral and the apostolic gifts functioning and working. Look, you know it, I know it, but it's a good reminder. It's always good to kind of come back to truth. If something matters to the shepherd, it matters to the church. So the spiritual leader has tremendous influence, especially from the pulpit. And so, I've heard it before that you get behavior-wise in the church what you preach on. And so when the spiritual leader can say things like, "Hey, today or this week in my small group," or "How about this one? Our groups are studying something relevant and powerful." What it does is it signals that groups are vital. This is the kind of leadership that sets the tone for the entire church. And so I just can't overemphasize. I can't stress it enough that the leader, we would call him, in our terms, the pastor of the church, but kind of that apostolic leader. You have to support it if you want it to go in the church. You're gonna, as somebody used to, a congregant used to tell me, said, "Pastor, you're going to have to lead the parade." And so So look, you've got to lead the parade. You need to be in a small group, leader, pastor, apostolic leader. If you want it to go and go well in the church, you need to be in a group and functioning in the group, not just checking a box, but contributing to the group, living in the group, receiving from the group, and then massage that into your Sunday morning messages. Talk about the good things that are happening. Talk about your experiences. Be vulnerable. Be transparent, and let people who are maybe on the fringe of being in a small group, let them connect to these spiritual communities through your communication on Sunday morning, through your casting apostolic vision. So that's what the apostolic leadership does in this strategy. It's about keeping the missional focus of Christ in front of the congregation. And that includes the fellowship and the discipleship that should happen in small groups. So apostolic leadership, it keeps the vision, it keeps the mission before the church. Pastoral leadership in this strategy comes along and models the need for group life by participating in it and demonstrating the priority of small group ministry, of community, spiritual community formation. So pastoral leadership prioritizes this in the life of the church, and that's exactly it. It has to be a priority. If spiritual community is not being prioritized through pastoral and apostolic leadership, man, I'm telling you, it is not going to fly. So don't be a leader that delegates and says, "All right, y'all go do this." Delegate for sure, but participate. Be a supporter. Be a participator. Be a champion of small group ministry, of spiritual community formation in the church, because it is absolutely necessary. So here's a great reflection question as we're thinking and reflecting on our small group ministry. Is your small group ministry consistently visible in the pulpit, and is it woven into your vision? All right. You might say, "Well, Charles, I haven't preached a sermon just about small groups," and that's okay. But are you weaving the ministry of spiritual and community formation of the church? Are you weaving that in? That's a priority of the church, and so we want to weave that into our Sunday morning messages. There's always a place. There's always a place to tie in spiritual community, and is it woven into the vision of the church? You want to make sure that spiritual community is an integral part, not an appendage, but part of the DNA of the church, and so that comes as you weave that into vision, and as you consistently make small group ministry visible from the pulpit. All right, let's talk about a second strategy. You need to provide ongoing leader training. So yeah, you need to train the people, and it needs to be ongoing. This isn't just one Saturday in the basement of the church, and then thanks for showing up. Hope you do great in leading your small group. Ongoing leader training, and so we see the teacher and the apostle at work in this strategy. Every profession necessitates formal training. When you think about that, teachers, firefighters, accountants, even baristas, sadly, churches fail to provide regular training for group leaders. And that's a problem. So it could be why guests don't return. Just think about that. An untrained leader can unintentionally create an unwelcoming or ineffective group experience. And we don't want that. Because look, what we're doing this is not just an activity. We're not just checking a box. Discipleship is at stake in the life of the church. Eternity is at stake for the community and for the local church. So we want to ensure there's ongoing leader training. Training is vital. It's training leaders is not optional. Training is the engine of reproducible discipleship. I want you to hear that. I want you to really massage that into your self-talk, I guess, of leadership. Leader training is the engine of reproducible discipleship. And so it's what moves the church from having a great discipleship event to building a culture of discipleship within the church. Ongoing leader training. Each each small group, and we want to kind of give you a framework of how to establish these leaders, these small group teams. Each small group needs 3 leadership roles. We've talked about this before, but as a reminder, every small group you want to have a team of 3. You want a teacher, an apprentice, and someone who is responsible for hospitality. And so here's how we see the fivefold ministry at work in this strategy. The apostolic leader will cast the vision and create the urgency for leaders to grow and to be trained. So that's where the apostolic functions in this ministry. You're creating urgency, you're casting vision, you're creating urgency for leaders to want to grow and to want to be trained. So that's critically important. Now remember, it's through these trained small group leaders that you're caring for and you're discipling, 50 to 70% of the congregation. So over half, we're talking about the majority of the church being cared for, being discipled in these small group environments. So we cannot overlook. We have to provide ongoing leader training. The teacher function in all of this comes along and shapes the content and makes sure that the equipping that's taking place in these groups is relevant and is powerful. Because again, the function of the teacher in the way we teach fivefold ministry, the teacher function produces strong ministers. So teachers are that function of the teacher leadership is going to shape content and make sure the equipping, the instruction, is relevant and powerful. So here's the reflection question: what's your rhythm of equipping those who shepherd others? All right, what's training? What's the training rhythm look like? What's the frequency look like? How often are you gathering? What are you instructing? How are you learning together? So just begin to identify, all right, what's our rhythm of equipping those who shepherd others? And look, for some of you may have it down. It may be everything's on beat and everything's in time. For the rest of us, we may not be in rhythm. It may be clunky and it may be out of sync. That's okay. That's what this episode's for, is to take time to assess, to reflect, and to begin to identify. All right, these are the places where we're out of rhythm and we're out of step. And so just begin to ask and begin to think. Maybe bring the leadership team in and just begin to ask this question: what's our rhythm of equipping those who shepherd others? Bruce, what's a third strategy you can help us with?
Yeah, well, I find my next strategy falling really in line with what you're already saying, Charles. Just the importance of leadership, setting the tone, and also, you're also setting the pace for training. I also say in the class or in the small group, you want to make sure that a systematic and structured. You're using a systematic and structured learning content, and that really does fall on, I think, the gift of the teacher. You're using a system of what I think is important: sequence, continuity, and purpose. They're vital to helping learners identify the pathways for the learning and the expectations that we're placing on them as part of our small group. And so you may be talking about the use of a certain amount of time. One group may use 8 weeks, another group may use 15 weeks, a quarter system, maybe a monthly system. But what you're doing is you're putting people into a frame of mind, into expectations. And so there needs to be sequence and purpose, but also continuity. There needs to be some integration into a larger identified purpose for the learning, the study. It could be a small group where you're working through pastoral epistles. It could be a small group. I'm taking a small group right now through marketplace Christianity, kind of can call to in your life in the marketplace. But anything that you're using, I think it needs to be a system or systematic approach that uses those three things: sequence, continuity, and purpose. Really, a well-designed plan is what ensures that every lesson, every facilitated discussion is a meaningful, relevant Bible study experience. I don't think personally that we need to do book studies of the Bible to say we're studying the Bible. Sometimes that may come out in the principles of another book, like for example, this book that I'm using with a small group. It could be a video driven lesson, but as the teacher gift is active in this role, that it's important to make sure that things are aligning with. I mean, what is your strategy for making disciples? What is the output that you're looking for in your small group? That systematic, structured learning and the content that is paired with that is vital to you getting the output that you want from your discipleship program. You know, good curriculum can bring depth and consistency. It can maintain theological integrity. And again, whatever the format, those are some things you want to keep in mind. And again, the teacher gift is what is active in that sense to manage the process of truth leading to transformation. That really is the bottom line of the teacher gift when it's active in small group ministry. It's managing the process. It's facilitating the learning. Remember that I use this with our small group leaders time and time again. They recognize that I'm going to keep them accountable on this one thing. What is your purpose? And if they tell me, well, my purpose is to teach a Bible study, then I immediately correct them. Their purpose is not to teach a Bible study. Their purpose is to manage the process of truth leading to transformation. Their goal is to make disciples. It's not to get through a study. It's not to complete a curriculum. The larger vision of that, and Charles, that really is. I think that's what the apostolic leader does. They set the tone. This group is about spiritual transformation and discipleship. Well, the teacher is the one that's activating that in the small group experience. So, a question to think about is: are your groups unified in a systematic biblical learning, and are they contextual in style? Again, context is important. You're going to have groups of people that relate to one style in your church, where others are going to relate better to another style. And that's something we constantly have to keep in focus. And again, the teacher gift is what is managing that. The teacher gift is where we begin to apply those things that are effective and that maintain faithfulness to the overall mission. So I would say that's definitely a vital one. That systematic and structured learning when it comes to the content. Another thing that I think is rather unique, and I found this was in the Lifeway article. I would call it create a story sharing culture. And that's unique, and I think in Pentecostal charismatic churches, the idea that testimony breeds transformation. That's just in the DNA of. Think about it. As Pentecostal and charismatics, we're constantly thinking about the present activity of God, and what greater way to identify that than someone's testimony, what God is doing in their life personally. So we like to encourage an environment, and we want to encourage an environment of story sharing, building that culture. Again, because testimony breeds transformation. Peer testimony is powerful, and it can become a bridge, I think, to people becoming more comfortable, not only sharing their own story, their own faith story, but also, learning to become more comfortable in sharing their spiritual gifts. And the truth is, when people hear from someone like them, like a peer, it begins to build trust and familiarity, and also, I think it can engender curiosity. And again, personal narrative is a starting point. People start by sharing their personal stories. It's not just about telling life events, it's about sharing their lives and how they're dealing with the uncertainties, maybe of life in Christ, but also how God is working in their circumstances. And again, that's just such a unique thing. I mean, I can think of the Wednesday night Bible study growing up as a kid, and the pastor creating space in that Wednesday night format for people to tell testimonies. I think that's a dynamic component that should be part of small groups because it contextualizes faith. It helps people share not only illustrations and learn from illustrations from the teacher, but also kind of contribute their own illustrations of how God is working in them personally. And it creates confidence again when it comes to sharing. And I think it helps others look at their experience from a faith perspective. When it comes to the fivefold gifts and implementing that strategy, think about the space for prophetic leadership. That prophetic leader is facilitating spirit-led sharing, and they're modeling that. They're identifying, the activity of God, not only in their own lives, but the lives of others. And so the prophetic role is really helpful to facilitate that in small group learning. And then, the pastoral role. We haven't said it enough today, but the pastoral role really is the direct connection to small group ministry. And so the pastoral role is about creating safety for people to open up, to feel comfortable to share. The pastor really is setting the tone for that small group being a safe place for people to share their story. And so I think those are two roles, the prophetic and the pastoral role, that are vital to pulling off that strategy effectively by creating a story sharing culture, a storytelling environment. So a question to reflect on at this point is: are your groups just discussing, or also confessing, or celebrating, experiencing healing? And so reflect on that some, and as you process through that strategy. Charles, you're gonna give a few more strategies, aren't you?
Yeah, I think the next strategy we need to talk about is we need to optimize our meeting spaces. So in this strategy, we see the pastor function and the apostle function in this strategy. So thinking about optimizing our meeting spaces, but whether it's a living room, a classroom, or a Zoom room, environment matters. So you want the best environment that you can have. So think through those things. Where are the small groups going to meet, and how can we optimize those meeting places? How can we make them uh, the best they can be? And so and that's a lot to think through it. And it's not just on you, but you're bringing that leadership team. Remember, you got a team of three leading the meeting. So how can the team best optimize uh, that living room, that classroom, the Zoom room, whatever the environment is? How can it be best prepared? Um, Seeing your meeting spaces through new eyes, that's a great place to really focus on. You know, what do you want this environment to look like? What do you want the atmosphere to feel like? When people come in, how do you want people to feel? Um, Begin to envision the guests that you want to be there. Who's going to be in the room? Who are you trying to attract, and who do you want to bring into the room? And beginning to setting up those meeting spaces. Look through some new eyes, some new lens if you will. Apostolic leadership will steward the resources and facilities of the local church. So apostolic leadership is not just casting the vision and establishing the date, or apostolic leadership also stewards resources, uh, stewards facilities for the local church, and so apostolic leader, you may need to step up your game and kind of bring the facilities up. That may be an area of leadership that you need to exercise. Stewarding resources, it may mean you need to move some things around in the budget. Charles, we don't have extra money to put towards small groups, and then you may need to allocate differently some line items and take away from uh, some programs if you're going to prioritize small group ministry. So again, apostolic leadership will steward resources, and that's just another name for manage. You're going to manage the resources the church has. You're going to manage. You're going to steward well the facilities of the local church as this pertains to optimizing the meeting spaces for small group ministry. Now, pastoral leadership functions in this manner. Pastoral leadership is always thinking about maximizing hospitality and facilitating connection. So pastoral leadership is going to look at the facility, at the room, and they're going to think, how is this environment going to best maximize hospitality? How are we going to best connect with people? How are we going to help facilitate human connection in this room? And so that's what pastoral leadership does. Because again, the pastoral gift brings healing, it brings connection, it builds relationship. So that's what pastoral leadership is doing in this process. How can we maximize hospitality, and what are the best practices? How can we facilitate in the best ways human connection and relationship? So the question rather to ask for this strategy is this: are your spaces welcoming, and are they demonstrating your priority for connection and accessibility? So that's a very practical question to answer. And if you'll be honest, this can really help you to gain some great traction in your small group ministries. Think about the environments where your groups are meeting. Look, that's not just a throwaway. It's not just we've got a meeting space and now we're done. Your teams need to focus on that. Are they welcoming? And do they demonstrate your priority for connection and accessibility? Are they prepared? Are they ready when the guests walk in? Think about that when you invite people over to your home for a meal. Uh, do you just invite them in and say, well, we're just going to tell them we just live here, and so and obviously we all live in our homes, but if you're like most people, beforehand you prepare and you take time because you want your guests to feel welcome, and so you clean the house, you straighten up, and into whatever level you're doing that. I guess that depends on your family dynamic, but you're taking action to maximize hospitality and to facilitate connection. You set the table in a certain way. I want so and so. I want certain people to sit in certain areas so that we can build connection. We can have conversation. We invite people to come in, and why do we do that? So that we can facilitate connection. Wouldn't it be terrible if you invited someone you're wanting to build a friendship with, and you just you've prepared the meal, you've done all the things, but you just stand at the front door and have a conversation, and they never get to come in and enjoy that. That's ridiculous. But I think that's kind of a dynamic that plays out in our small groups sometimes. I think sometimes we get a leadership team, and then we get a date on the calendar, and we get the curriculum we're going to use, but we fail to think about the environment where we're going to meet. And just as you would prepare the environment, you would prepare your home uh, to welcome in new guests. You want to prepare the meeting space, wherever that is, to receive and to welcome new guests. All right. Well, the next strategy. Let's move on. Uh, we want to facilitate fellowship and mission events. All right, through our small group ministry. So we see the evangelist and the pastoral gift working in this strategy. Outreach events draw in outsiders, and fellowship deepens belonging. Fellowship is what facilitates the connection, helps people to feel like they belong. So the evangelist initiates growth with new participants, and the pastor integrates that and connects the people. Uh, so think about your small groups, um, fellowship and mission events, uh, outreach events, fellowship events. What is that? What does that kind of balance look like in your small groups? Is there outreach? Is there fellowship? Um, you know, fellowship is going to be. It's probably going to be just a little more natural in the small group. Um, but we've got to build in outreach. We want evangelism taking place because we don't want that small group to just be static and to kind of freeze. We want it to. We're talking about multiplying through these spiritual communities. We want these groups to grow, and so where we've started with one group, we want that group to grow into two or three, into multiple groups. And how's that going to happen? Well, there has to be outreach, there has to be evangelism taking place, and we've got to be intentional about that. It makes me think about my mom, who years and years ago, um, she and my dad pastoring a church, and my mom was tasked with teaching a Sunday school class. So that's a great example of a small group, of a spiritual community. And so she's teaching this Sunday school class, and it's just a small handful of people in the Sunday school class, and she just felt burdened that we need to add to this group what we have to offer here. The life of Christ, is valuable and beneficial for people. We need to add to. We need to bring in new people into this Sunday school class. And so she became intentional as she led that group, and so she started with just a small handful of people, and she would set an empty chair. Everybody would come in and find their seat for the Sunday school uh, lesson that day, and then she would go and place an empty chair in their room. And I think people maybe were a little puzzled at first, but as she began to cast the vision, she began to tell people what the purpose of the empty chair was, and they began to pray for the person who would fill that empty chair, or for the husband and wife that would come and fill that empty space. So Bruce, she created some space, through some apostolic vision casting, and lo and behold, through casting the vision, placing the empty chair there, the Sunday school class began to pray for the empty chair and the people who would occupy that, and it birthed something within the participants in the group that, hey, I need to be bringing uh, friends and family with me because as a group we're going to intentionally be involved in outreach and evangelism, and over the course of months. I'm not sure how long that was, but by the time that she finished her assignment of teaching that Sunday school class, I want to say that class had grown to about 75 people. To me, that's just amazing that class had multiplied. And what we would do today, kind of in a modern context, is say to keep our small groups kind of in that 10 to 12 people range. We would make multiple groups out of that. But what is that kind of ministry? Talking about my mom's Sunday school class, what has that done? it's multiplied the church. It's elevated. It's lifted the church. We've started with a small handful of people, but now that small group has blossomed uh, uh, into disciples, people who are worshiping Jesus together, who are caring for one another in this small group, who are learning new skills and developing in their relationship with Christ, and now they're being involved in evangelism, and the group has multiplied, and as a result, the church is being lifted. Um, that's what we want from our small group ministry, small groups that multiply, and fellowship and mission events, or fellowship and outreach events. Uh, really, you want that at the forefront of as you're establishing these spiritual community groups. So here's the question: When was the last time your group shared a meal? When's the last time you just had some time to fellowship, to be with one another? And the other part of that is, when was the last time your group served on mission together? Maybe it was a community outreach project. Maybe it was an intentional evangelism outreach strategy, uh, invitation strategy. But whatever it is, when's the last time that your groups were serving on mission together? All right, let's look at the last strategy here, and it's this: we need to create a multiplication and leadership pipeline. And so that's we see three of the gifts working here: apostle, teacher, and prophet, in building this multiplication and leadership pipeline. So think about the fivefold gifts. Think about those three: apostle, teacher, and prophet at work. As the multiplication and leadership pipeline is being developed, apostles are identifying and sending. All right, so the apostolic function is identifying potential leaders and placing them or sending them, releasing them into ministry. The teaching gift, the teaching function is recruiting those leaders that are being identified, and they're training those prospective leaders so that the apostolic function can send them. Now the prophetic leaders, the prophetic function, they're seeing the present activity of Christ, and they are confirming gifts, the giftings of that person. So look how this kind of works together. The prophetic gift sees the activity of Christ in a potential leader or potential group of leaders, and talks to the apostolic gift and says, I believe the Lord's doing something in their life. What do you think about uh, identifying them and as new potential leaders, kind of in the pipeline for our small group ministry? And the apostle says, I think I agree with you. I see the Lord doing those things as well. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. And so now the apostles identified the new leaders, and the apostle says, hey, teacher function, teacher gift, help me come alongside. Let's recruit them, and I'm gonna put them in your care to train them up. You're going to instruct them. You're going to produce a powerful and strong minister. And so the teacher function gets in part of the process here, and now we've got a leader who we see the activity of God working in their life. They've been identified. They're being trained. Now the apostle function, the apostolic leader says, let's place you, let's send you to lead a new small group that's developing. And so what we're doing is we're building a multiplication and a leadership pipeline. And we do that over and over again. What happens is this trio activates the next wave of group leaders. And that's a huge point of resistance is, look, Charles, we don't have enough leaders to do this. And what Bruce and I are saying is, you've got to build this multiplication and leadership pipeline. Begin to let these three gifts work and function together so that there's going to come a time you do have enough leaders. And you don't wait until you have enough. You start now and you begin to build. And you lay one piece of the track down and you run on that. And as you're running, you're building the next piece. It's a constant building and developing process. But when these three gifts work and function together, the next wave of group leaders begin to emerge. They're identified, they're recruited, they're trained, they're sent and released, and the church continues to flourish. So here's the question: are you raising consumers, or are you commissioning co-laborers? All right, are you raising consumers or commissioning co-laborers? So, Bruce, what are the ascension gifts or the servant gifts of Christ look like in small groups? That's so important to spiritual formation.
We've talked so much about how important it is to generate, good small group ministry from a fivefold ministry perspective. But there's actually a role for those gifts in the small group. Now, we mentioned earlier that there are three roles that you need leadership-wise for any small group. You need a facilitator. You need a leader. You also need someone who is apprenticing or learning how to lead along with the leader. And then you need a hospitality person. We're not saying that those are the only three roles you need. You still want in the group, you still want the fivefold giftings. You don't want fivefold positions. You want the fivefold giftings. And so I was thinking maybe one way to contextualize it is just to think of what is your goal? What are you trying to produce in disciples? We did a few weeks ago, I think we did Peter Scazzero's 7 Marks of Emotionally Healthy Disciples. And so I was just reflecting on that and thinking about what would that look like in a small group setting. So I'm just going to use his 7 marks of emotionally healthy discipleship and and kind of go from there. So I hope this will work, but let's try it. Remember that Scazzero says that it's important that healthy leadership is about being before doing, that disciples need to learn that their life is one of being before doing. And so, to implement that, we need to remember to emphasize that with disciples. You remember Moses at the burning bush when God appeared to Moses at the burning bush, and Moses said, "Who are you, Lord?" And the Lord spoke, and He said, "I am." He didn't say, "I do." He said, "I am." And kind of reminds me, forgive me, but I can't help but think of the old Van Halen song. I think it's from the Twister soundtrack, "Humans Being." That's who we are. We are human beings. We're not human doing. Humans, human doers. We tend to act like that, though, and I think it's important to recenter discipleship on things like identity. So we want to prioritize being with God and letting the life of His Spirit have cultivated an environment to begin to grow in our identity. I think in a small group setting, prophetic leadership in the small group is going to implement things like worship, use disciplines of praise, of silence, of thanksgiving, of prayer. I think it's not just something we want to emphasize to the larger congregation, the importance of private devotions. We talk about getting the congregation involved in private devotions. I really think that needs to be reinforced in small groups too. I think there needs to be an accountability measure that says every member of this small group is going to participate at some level in private devotions. The idea of spending time as a group in prayer, I think that facilitates the Spirit's empowerment. I think it facilitates encounter, and those are just vital. So prophetic leadership is important for emphasizing being over doing, and also teaching leadership. I think one of the things that is important for teachers to remember is that one of the goals of this group is to equip people to live out their identity in Christ. You see that constantly in the Apostle Paul's ministry. The idea of really defining what it means to be in Christ, what it means to be a follower of Jesus. It's not entailed in just what you do, but intrinsically who you are. So I think the prophetic and the teacher roles are really important there. Another thing that Scazzero says is, and we spent a lot of time on this a few weeks ago, one of my favorite episodes we've done, is about following the crucified Jesus and not the culturalized Jesus. Remember that if we follow the wrong Jesus, we're gonna become the wrong person. Our goal is to help people to become like Christ. So it's important that we embrace things about Jesus that are not always tied to who he's often presented, in the culture. Who is he biblically? Who is the biblical Jesus? Well, he's the crucified Jesus. He gave up his own life. He lived in humility. He was countercultural, and so we want to encourage that in people to embrace sacrifice and to count the cost and realize that's part of the Christian life. Sacrifice, to cultivate humility. Charles, I think humility is so vital in discipleship because humility. It's like Francis Frangipane said that humility is the substructure of all transformation. That's where that's where God pours out grace, where He finds people that are humble and teachable and submitting to Him. And so I think it's important that that's part of it. And apostolic leadership in the small group. I'm not saying that your leader in the small group is an apostle. We're not saying that. But there is an apostolic gifting, an apostolic functioning where they cast vision for Christ likeness. They keep the image of Jesus in front of the group. And then also teaching leadership is about teaching and equipping people to practice things like self-denial, to embrace humility, to embrace servant living, and to pursue a Christ-like mission. So I would say those are two areas. Charles, what would be a couple other areas?
Well, I believe embracing God's gift of limits. We've got to acknowledge and accept human limits are as part of God's design. None of us have all five of the gifts. We've kind of said it tongue in cheek before, but it takes about two or three of us to make one Jesus, So there are limits that we can operate in the ascension gifts of Christ, the servant leadership gifts of Christ. And we just have to accept that limits are part of God's design, but that's a good thing because it doesn't all fall and burden just one person. So acknowledge and accept human limits as part of God's design. So this is really a pastoral function, pastoral gift functioning here because again, this doesn't mean that this person is the pastor of the church in the terms that we understand and typically use that word pastor, but it is the pastoral gift at work and functioning within this small group. What is that gift doing? It's caring for soul health. So it's providing pastoral care. Isn't that amazing that people can come and be in a small group? In most churches, just the truth of the matter is, people only receive crisis care. So something bad has to happen before someone shows up at their home or goes to the hospital, and it's usually a pastor or someone on the pastoral staff. What a great opportunity! What a great privilege to release the gifts of Christ in a small group environment, where now people move from and the church moves from crisis care to continuous care, where their soul is being nurtured, where health is being cultivated through the pastoral gift in a small group environment. Boundaries are being learned, and how to establish boundaries, how to set boundaries, so that again there's health, there's nurture, there's care for the individual, and for the greater family. There is understanding and instruction about practicing a Sabbath. Finding rest, realizing that rest, in my opinion, rest is an act of worship. It doesn't mean that we're lazy, but it is an engaging in activity that brings restoring and restoration, health, brings energy back to us. So that pastoral function, that pastoral gift, is nurturing Sabbath, and then really helps to turn attention to the family life. So in our world of busyness and accomplishment and achievement, and the family and the life of the family oftentimes becomes neglected. But in this small group environment, the pastoral function is really directing our attention back to the family as well, so that the family is being cared for. The family is finding rest. Understanding that embracing God's gift of limits, this pastoral function really powers that. And so the next point to talk about would be discover the treasure that's buried in grief and in loss. Discover the treasure buried in grief and loss. So, allowing pain and loss to form Christ-like character. Uh, Again, we're talking about these 7 marks. So, uh, helping people in this small group environment come to the place that they realize that yes, we're experiencing pain and loss, but this doesn't have to be a dysfunctional experience. This even in the midst of pain and loss, we can still find Christ, and we can still have our character formed in the Christ-like character. So we see the pastoral and the prophetic working here, providing space for vulnerability and emotional honesty, affirming the activity of God, even in loss and difficulty. And so, in this kind of an environment, it's just a reminder that pain is not an end, but it is a point of growth and transformation. Bruce, any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, I would say there's a few more.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we want to uh, make love the measure of maturity with our disciples. Emotional health is about spiritual maturity, and so the pastoral function, the teacher function, are vital in that group to focus on relationships and spiritual formation in group life. I think that's something that is often missing. Discipleship alone is not going to happen from the pulpit. It takes relational context. And all the relationships that are part of a small group. You're going to find spiritual fathers and mothers in relationship. You're going to find someone to mentor. You're going to find the release of your gifts as a mentor in a small group. You're going to find the capacity to feel compassion and pray for other people, and those come, in that small group atmosphere. And so, again, the pastor and the teacher want to help that group focus on those relational dynamics that lead to spiritual maturity by teaching people to love one another, to show compassion. The evangelistic leader or the evangelistic function in that small group is about modeling and facilitating compassion for the lost. So when you do a group project, maybe a group outreach, that's where the evangelistic function gets to take the lead and say, listen, we care about God's lost sons and daughters in this community. Um, we care about lost family members, that we may create an environment for lost family members to come and be part of. So again, making love the measure of maturity, it has to be led, and it really does require the pastoral element, obviously the teaching element, and the evangelistic element. Also, think breaking the power of the past is also uh, a, a very powerful feature in the small group. That's where we can address generational patterns and wounds and facilitate healing environments. One thing I love about pastoral ministry, when you look at it in the fivefold grid, it doesn't bear the weight of everything. It really does free the pastoral role to be what a pastor is. A pastor is a shepherd. A pastor is a connector. And so I think the pastor is that catalyst for healing. I just love the image of Psalm 23. and how the shepherd is someone that nourishes and is life-giving, a life-giving figure in a person's life. And so again, when the pastoral role and the prophetic role, I think, are vital in that strategy of helping people break free from the power of their past. It incorporates healing prayer. Again, we emphasized storytelling earlier, allowing people uh, to process their story, to tell their story, whether it's a victorious moment of faith or whether it's a struggle. I think it's important that we create that space. And then the teaching gift is important to equip for spiritual health, to reinforce spiritual resources for freedom from the past. Again, that goes back a lot to identity, but I think those are definitely some really important uh, components to building that into your disciples in small group. And then lastly, I would say that it's important we teach people to lead out of weakness and vulnerability, to depend on God's strength and not personal charisma. I think one of the things that hinders people growing in leadership is leaning into some of their own natural strengths rather than depending on God's strength. And honestly, God's strength is perfected in weakness. Um, we're clay jars, man, and the excellence of the power it doesn't spill out until we show the cracks, until we show how vulnerable we are. And so teaching people that is the the pastoral role. Let me say that in the small group, it doesn't have to be the lead pastor of the local church. It's just someone that is functioning in a pastoral capacity. That function of pastor helps create um, a safe place for people to share their struggles. Leaders can share their struggles in a small group, and I think they need to learn to become more vulnerable, to be more self-sharing, and they can model authenticity. They can model not only vulnerability, but they can also demonstrate how important that is to being a grace receiver. And so, leading out of weakness and vulnerability, that has to be modeled. And I think that pastoral function in small groups is really vital. Charles, we really we're pushing time today, but I can't let us go today until we begin to integrate some of these principles in small group discipleship. So, how do we apply this in the local church?
There's three actions that we can take. And I encourage you to take this next month, take the next 30 days, and really begin to implement these three actions. Number one, audit your current groups. Take an audit of your current groups. What does the leadership look like? Are they aligned with fivefold functions? Where is their drift, or where's their burnout or imbalance? A lot of questions that you can answer there, but begin by auditing your current groups. Second action we can take is empower fivefold voices at the group level. So always remember, apostolic, it casts vision for connection and discipleship. It forms the body through systems. It scales multiplication, and it launches new leaders. The prophetic, it fosters authenticity, spiritual hunger, and discernment. Pastoral role, shepherds hearts, builds community, releases healing, cultivates care. The teaching role, teaching gift, grounds people in the word. It forms faithful leaders. And finally, the evangelistic gift reaches outsiders, invites participation, catalyzes growth. So recognize and release those with apostolic, prophetic, or teaching gifts to shape your group strategy. The third action we can take is this: embed the strategies above for healthy disciples. Set a quarterly goal, or set quarterly goals to grow through learning, through inviting, through fellowship, and through engagement. So what if every group became a greenhouse for gospel growth? Well, that greenhouse starts with fivefold vision and intentional action. Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you.
We have delivered on content today. The
Yeah.
Fivefold Gifts podcast is never short of really great content. And so we hope that you're able to use some of our measly content today. Remember, discipleship doesn't just happen in sermons; it happens in stories. It happens in living rooms. It happens in circles of trust that are forged in relationship. And so, when the fivefold gifts work together, small groups stop being programs. They really become portals for supernatural transformation. So let's learn to lead, equip, and multiply like Jesus intended, with all five gifts engaged and every believer equipped and empowered. What can you do this week from just some things that maybe sparked in you from this podcast? If this episode did that for you, or maybe you're seeing that it can be that kind of catalyst for your team or ministry, then share it with your group director, share it with your lead pastor, share it with your leadership team, share it with your small group team, and get them on board with maybe some things that you're processing and thinking through. Let our podcast support what you're doing. You can also subscribe and leave a review so more leaders like you can discover what we offer on the Five Gifts podcast. As always, if you're ready for coaching, whether you lead a church, a nonprofit, or a kingdom-minded business, we offer customized coaching for individuals and church teams. So that can be one-on-one coaching to clarify your personal call and strengthen your systems. There can be some team strategy sessions to help you align your leadership and your priorities and your growth rhythms. You can also schedule your free discovery call now at charlesrusselltraining.com or charlesrussellministries.com and coachingcardia.com. Now, until next time, we encourage you, keep building, keep equipping your leaders, and keep leaning into the fivefold future for your local church. God bless.
You've been listening to the Five Gifts podcast. If you would like to take the next step as a spiritual leader, we invite you to visit either of our websites or contact us for leadership coaching. We can help you reach the next level in your own growth and leadership. We provide leadership, spiritual gift, and personality assessments that give you a better grasp of your leadership style. And we also create a customized growth plan that empowers you to reach your full kingdom potential. We can't wait to hear from you.